Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my early thoughts and transfer plans ahead of Game Week 2 and I'll also discuss some of the things that I noticed and how it might affect my team from Game Week 1. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, if you are new to my channel, I do this video every single Sunday after the football ends, where I just go through my initial thoughts after the game week, some of my early transfer plans as well, and it's just something to give you to watch on a Sunday evening. So if that sounds good to you and you're not yet subscribed, please do make sure to subscribe, and if you are subscribed, please make sure to drop a like. I really do appreciate it. So yeah, I'm recording this directly after the Manchester United-Arsenal game. I myself am a Manchester United fan, and that was not the way that I expected that game to go. I think Man United deserved at least a draw. Maybe I'm biased. I've not really been on social media because I was watching the game, but I felt like we performed quite well. I wasn't overly impressed with Arsenal, so I don't feel too bad right now with 0 Arsenal in my team, although they do face Leeds, obviously, in Game Week 2. And obviously, I do have Fernandes in my team, who didn't quite manage to get DEFCON. I think he finished on 11 defensive contributions. So, did Game Week 1 go well for me? Not particularly. I'm currently ranked 4.7 million. Now, I will always say that up until about Game Week 15, 16, I'm not too fussed about rank anyway, but especially in Game Week 1. Really, all it is a Game Week rank. So me being 4.7 million or 2 million or 100k, it doesn't really mean too much. What I am more worried about is, am I happy with the picks that I've made in my Game Week 1 team? That is much more my concern right now. And I would say largely, yes. There are definitely some picks where if I could have it again, I would probably change them, i.e. maybe Fulkrug, as we'll discuss in a second. But largely, most of these players I would be very, very happy to pick again if I had the chance. So let's go through the team and how it did. So starting with Sanchez in goal, 7 points is lovely. I have said for a while now that I do think the Chelsea defence are underrated. And yes, you could say there is a little bit of fortune there. If the Eze free kick had been given, then they wouldn't have had the clean sheet. But I think largely Chelsea are a team that I expect to be up there in probably the top 4 or 5 teams for clean sheets at the end of the season. But they're also not perfect enough that Sanchez won't make saves, right? He will make saves on quite a regular basis, which means he can go and get those 7, 8, 9 pointers. I'm very happy to have Sanchez in my team. I do still think he's a little bit prone to mistakes, though. I think for the Eze goal, yes, he was unsighted, but I also think he could have done a lot better. I'm glad it was disallowed, though, for my FPL team, of course. In the defence, I did actually manage to pick up 2 clean sheets, but I unfortunately benched one of them. So I actually went with Williams, Porro, Juve, Richards, and Esteve as my defenders. Pedro Porro and Richards picked up clean sheets, but I did decide to bench Richards. And I think that makes sense, given it was Chelsea away. But yeah, Williams and Juve, very frustrating. Juve obviously conceded 3 goals, and Williams picked up the yellow card. So a point for each of those wasn't great. I will just say, Williams actually created 2 chances, one of them being a big chance. And I would say that Williams was the most threatening of the Nottingham Forest defenders for attacking threat. He was also average to slightly decent in terms of defensive contributions, but I was impressed with him in terms of going forward, and that's why I like him, because not only do I think he's fine for defensive contributions, but I do think he'll offer you some attacking threat as well. Pedro Porro, Spurs. Spurs actually conceded quite a few chances to Burnley. I think they were slightly fortunate to get the clean sheet. But he actually, as we'll discuss in a second, created the combined most chances of any defender in Game Week 1. So I think Pedro Porro is great. And then on Juve, you might look at this now and say you've picked 2 West Ham players. They lost 3-0 to Sunderland. It was not a good performance from West Ham, but Juve was incredibly impressive. He actually had a shot cleared off the line, which was assisted by Fulkrug. Obviously, it's fine margins, right? And you can say ifs, buts, and maybes all season, and I will try not to do that. But if the Fulkrug assist and Juve goal had gone in, then obviously this team looks a hell of a lot better all of a sudden. But I really like the positions that Juve was picking up. And it's very nice to see Richards getting a clean sheet on my bench as well. In terms of the midfield, this is kind of frustrating, right? 3 of my most expensive players in Wirtz, Fernandes, and Palmer all blanked. Obviously, Salah gets the goal right at the death, and then Tijjani Reijnders was just sensational. We've actually got a specific section in this video to discuss Reijnders because I think his performance was that impressive, and obviously he's incredibly cheap. But Wirtz, Salah, Fernandes, Palmer, I would say largely disappointing. I mean, even Mohamed Salah, I wasn't particularly impressed in that game. If not for a moment of brilliance at the end of the game, which he often does, by the way, we'd be looking at this and saying, blanks from Wirtz, Salah, Fernandes, Palmer. Now, I'm not going to overreact. Like, 1 game week just isn't enough. And something which I'm going to try and make clear in this video is we do not have enough information to start making massive changes to our teams. Unless you are planning a wildcard too, in which case you kind of have to. I would say largely just try and exercise patience and not stress out. Like, you've picked these players for a reason. It could just be that a player that you picked that didn't play well, they just didn't play well. Like, players have off games. Teams have off games. Aston Villa looked awful. Do I think for a second that Aston Villa are a bad team, that you should sell Watkins and Rodgers? Absolutely not. And that same thing goes for the likes of Palmer, Wirtz, like I say, to some extent Salah, and also Bruno Fernandes. I picked these 4 players for a reason. I was actually quite impressed with Florian Wirtz. I think he picked up a lot of nice positions on the pitch. It was nice to see him taking a lot of corners as well. The player I was most disappointed with was actually Cole Palmer, because I watched that entire Chelsea Crystal Palace game. I chose to watch that rather than the Brentford Forest game, and I was really just not impressed. I don't even think he had a bad game per se. Like, I don't think he did anything particularly bad on the ball. He just didn't really get the ball. Now, a lot of teams have started to do this, where they just stop Cole Palmer from getting the ball. That's not good, though. I would say in general, though, Crystal Palace are just a very, very good team, and I think they're a very underrated defence themselves. So, again, I don't want to jump to too many conclusions, but Palmer has been largely very disappointing for the entirety of 2025. He had a very good Club World Cup. If he goes back to having very anonymous games where he struggles to get into the game and to get on the ball, he's too much money for that. I can't afford to have a player at 10.5 million that I am watching for 90 minutes, and I just don't feel like they're getting on the ball. So that was a little bit worrying. Bruno Fernandes played a little bit deeper. I still feel like he created some chances in there. He was very, very, very close to defensive contribution points as well. Again, at the time of recording, it looks like he's on 11. You only need 12 to get the DEFCON points. And obviously, I don't own a 9 million player just for DEFCON. I actually think the reason that Bruno Fernandes didn't hit defensive contribution points is because Man United dominated the back half of that game. He was on 8 defensive contributions at half time, but for the second half, Man United barely had to defend, which meant that Bruno didn't have to do too much. So anyway, a little bit disappointing when you look at how much you spend, and for my top scoring midfielder to be Tijjani Reijnders is kind of not what you expect. Again, we'll discuss Reijnders in a bit of detail later in the video. And then my front 2 blanked. I think that Aston Villa-Newcastle game was incredibly weird. Aston Villa didn't have a single shot in the first half. Watkins himself only had 1 shot in the entire game. I tweeted after 25 minutes that Watkins had only touched the ball 5 times. You don't need him to touch the ball. Erling Haaland doesn't barely touch the ball, and he scores lots of goals. But yeah, I don't know what happened to Aston Villa in that game. It was far from what I was expecting, and Newcastle looked really, really good. I would say the player I'm most disappointed in the 11 was actually Fulkrug, because I don't think he had a very good game. And it does worry me because he's not on penalties. He's not playing for a particularly good attack, and his best fixture was in Game Week 1. So if you were to say, Ross, if you think you've made one mistake, like what one player could you change in your team? For me, it really is only Fulkrug. I don't look at anyone else that I've picked and think they're a bad pick. Even Juve, I know they conceded 3 goals, but I think that was quite unfortunate. They didn't concede that many chances, and Juve was so attacking. Again, had a shot cleared off the line. So I think Fulkrug's the one that stands out. He created a couple of chances, but I think he's the issue in my team. Moving forward, I can foresee myself saying, right, I kind of need to sort out Fulkrug. But otherwise, yeah, 52 points. A little bit underwhelming, probably a slightly slower start than I'd want, but what can you do? Like, it's one game week. I don't think, like I said, we want to overreact too much just off one small bit of sample size. So, yeah, let me know what you think of the team and how it got on. Let me know how many points that you're on for Game Week 1. Obviously, it's only going to get worse for me because I don't have any Leeds and Everton players. So a lot of other people still have Njai or Tarkowski or Pickford or all of these other players. So it might be better for them Dewsbury Hall. For me, that's it. 52 all out. Let's now take a look at some interesting stats, talk about Tijjani Reijnders, and also look at my team for Game Week 2. So guys, for those of you that don't know, I actually have a podcast called FPL Therapy, which goes live every Tuesday at 8 AM UK time, where I basically review Game Week 1 in loads of details and talk through the games, the teams, the players. So if that sounds good to you, by the way, feel free to check it out. But as a result, I do often have to look at the games in details, and I do find some pretty interesting stats. So I thought, you know what, in these videos, especially as I've already done a lot of the prep for that, let me just present a couple of stats, or a few stats that stood out to me that I thought were quite interesting. And I should note that single game XG, XA sort of stats aren't overly useful. So take all of them with a pinch of salt, but I think it's at least interesting to look at, and also to remind us that sometimes the outcome is very different to what maybe should have happened or what we might have expected. So I know Tijjani Reijnders is going to be super popular. At the time of recording, as we'll discuss a bit later, it looks like he might even go up in price tonight. But I thought Anderson was really good. And actually, if you look at the XGI for the two players, Anderson had 0.67 XGI, Reijnders 0.34. What that means is Anderson had almost double the XGI of Tijjani Reijnders. Now, that doesn't tell the full story. The performance from Reijnders was wonderful. And also, I think Brentford looked absolutely shocking. Like, Forest have shown for a long time now, they're not one of the better attacks in the league, but they made them look free-flowing. So I think Brentford looked like a team to target. But just to say, Anderson was really good. He missed a big chance himself. He got the assist. He finished on 11 defensive contributions, by the way, which, by the way, could update until the game closes. So it might even be of Opta updates. He picks up the 2 DEFCON points. But it was a really good performance from him. So don't overlook Anderson. He looks as equally a good option as Tijjani Reijnders. I spoke about West Ham. West Ham conceded 0.68 XG. That's not a lot. That's actually the 4th lowest of the game week. So far, without the Monday night game, they put in the 4th best defensive performance in terms of the amount they conceded. Now, I'm not saying for a second that West Ham put in a good performance or that they are an elite defence. But what I'm saying is 3-0 probably flattered Sunderland, and overall I don't think it was an appalling defensive performance. I think it was actually a really bad performance from Hermansen. So on his first game, he's been brought in to replace Areola. I think it was a little bit poor and weak from him. To put a comparison in there, Spurs conceded 0.94 XG to Burnley. Lots of people lauding the Spurs as this incredible defence now. They actually conceded almost 1 XG, which was about sort of middle for this game week. So yeah, don't always just look at goals conceded and clean sheets, because often that doesn't tell the full story. Haaland was the only player to accumulate over 2 XG in Game Week 1. In fact, in second place, I think, was Ekitike with 1.1. So Haaland in a league of his own, he actually missed 2 big chances, which again, he was the only player in Game Week 1 to miss 2 big chances. So Haaland is just monstrous at the start of the season. When City play well and they're creating chances for fun, which with the likes of Bob and Reijnders and Marmoush and Shirky, they probably will, Haaland is just elite. Like, again, probably a player that was overlooked by a lot of content creators, myself included, because we wanted Mohamed Salah, because we have that fear of what Salah can do. But Haaland just always starts the season well. Another interesting stat, Porro and Reece James were the only defenders to create 3 chances in Game Week 1. So there were quite a few defenders on 2. Someone actually like Juve was a good example of a player that finished on 2 chances created. But Porro and James the only to create 3 chances. I'm not necessarily sure that Reece James will get the minutes. And obviously his fitness is a real doubt. And you've got the likes of Cucurella and Sanchez. But Porro, for me, I'm really glad I went with him in Game Week 1. I know Van de Ven and Romero are also fantastic value, but I just think that Porro will be an absolute machine under Thomas Frank. Rodgers, Watkins and Tielemans had a combined 1 shot in total. That was Ollie Watkins, which means Rodgers and Tielemans had a combined 0 shots. I do think this was just a one-off game, though, where Newcastle and Eddie Howe just got it right, and Aston Villa really struggled. And you can point to the red card, but again, in the first half, they had 0 shots. So I don't really think the red card necessarily hurt them. In fact, after the red card, they actually looked a little bit better. Cody Gakpo had the highest expected assist of Game Week 1, by the way. So not only did Cody Gakpo get really good minutes, and of course he scored the goal, but he also created 3 big chances. 3 chances, created 1 big chance, and had the highest expected assist of the game week. Cody Gakpo may well be the best Liverpool attacker if you're looking at value. I am already looking at something like, is Wirtz or Bruno to Gakpo an option for me to free up some funds? I did say in pre-season, Luis Diaz last season was unbelievable for the first 5 game weeks. He had like 50 points in 5 weeks. I reckon we're going to see this the same from Cody Gakpo. I see no reason why Cody Gakpo would slow down across the next 4 or 5 weeks, as long as he gets the minutes. The only concern is, if Liverpool do sign someone like Isak, Ekitike could share minutes with him on the left. But I think as of right now, Gakpo's just going to keep his place. And then in terms of defensive contributions, only 2 players hit 20 defensive contributions. And that, by the way, is a massive amount of DCs to get, or DEFCONs, which was Van Dijk and Tavernier. In fact, second for defenders was actually Ryan Ait-Nouri with 15. But yeah, Van Dijk in that game, and obviously Tavernier as well, they were just so good. I think the reason for that, it was such an end-to-end game. The ball was bouncing about all over the place. Obviously, Tavernier picking up a lot of ball recoveries. And Van Dijk was having to clear the ball constantly. Like, even Ilson was causing him some trouble, as was Semenyo. So I don't think you'll see many games like that. Not often players will hit 20. But yeah, those 2 were absolutely brilliant for it. So there we go. There are some fun stats from Game Week 1. Over time, I'll start to look at a bigger sample size. So when we get to Game Week 6, I'll probably look at some stats from the first 6 weeks. But yeah, as we go through it, if there's anything you want to see a little bit more of, do let me know down below in the comments. So guys, I want to talk a little bit about Tijjani Reijnders. I know a lot of other players have had fantastic game weeks, the likes of Chris Wood too, but I think there was something about that performance and also his price, him being new to the league, being a Man City player. it feels a little bit different. Like, he is already comfortably the most transferred in player. Over 500,000 people have brought in Tijjani Reijnders already. And as of me recording this, it looks like he might actually rise in price tonight. And I actually wanted to quickly show you, I get tons of questions, especially at the start of the season. How do you know who's going to go up in price? The website that I use is Fantasy Football Hub. I'll leave a link down below. You can actually check price changes for free. You just have to create an account, but you can do so for free. Obviously, there is tons more to the site that you may want to use. If you do, make sure to use my link for 50% off. But yeah, use the link down below. A couple of really important things. So these are predictions. No one knows the exact algorithm that FPL use. We try and interpret that, and these websites do that, but no one knows for sure, and therefore we can never say with 100% certainty that a player will or will not rise or fall in price. And the other thing is, they change by the second. So what they're based on is the amount of transfers per hour. So at the moment, Reijnders is rising at 5.22% per hour. Once a player hits 100%, that means we predict that they will rise in price that night. So Reijnders is already over 100%, and he's rising at a crazy rate. But if by 9 or 10 p.m, loads of people stop bringing him in, it might be that the rate slows down, and as a result, we are not as confident. So you need to check it on a consistent basis. I'm checking price changes throughout the night. Again, there'll be a link down below. Price changes take place at 2:30 a.m. BST or 1:30 a.m. GMT. So if you're based in the UK, 2:30 tonight, there will be a set of price changes if there are any players that change in price. So I think that's pretty much everything. So as you can see, over on Fantasy Football Hub, at the moment, Reijnders looks very, very likely to rise in price tonight. We thought there was a small chance it might happen last night, but it looks very much like it'll be tonight. Ekitike also is being brought in by a lot of managers. He looks like he could rise, and also Semenyo. As of right now, they are the only 3 players that are predicted to rise in price tonight. But again, it might be that in 2 hours, if the transfer rate slows down, none of them are. Also, Ballard, Richarlison, Haaland, Kudus, Wood all look like, again, in the coming days, they might be the sort of players that might rise. The only one that looks probable to sort of fall in price anytime soon, I mean, there's not really anyone massively. Solanke and Damsgaard a little bit on the lower side, maybe Isak, maybe Marlon, but most of you, I'd imagine, don't really own these players. So yeah, there is a link down below, but back to what we were actually talking about then. Tijjani Reijnders looks like he might rise in price to 5.6, and given his price, he is going to keep rising and keep rising if he gets the minutes and the returns. On your screen, what you've got is sort of the average positions of the players in that game with their number, and then a very long tweet from Luke at @dis_FPL. Luke is one of the best in the game for me at predicting Man City. A couple of seasons ago, he predicted the lineup every week, and he was getting it pretty spot on, which is very difficult to do with Pep. And he put out a pretty long tweet about the Man City setup and what it means in terms of Ryan Aït-Nouri and Tijjani Reijnders. So I'm going to read that out. Apologies for reading a very long tweet, but I think it really helps to contextualise what we might expect from City moving forward. So Luke said, Pep actually went for the old faithful invert fullback setup rather than the recent and expected double fullback push. So Pep used to do this a lot, where he basically starts with a back 4, one of the defenders, in this case Rico Lewis, inverts into midfield, and then the other 3 defenders basically serve as a back 3. He's not really done that as much. You know that in the past, like Gvardiol and Nico O'Reilly, they've basically been pushing up as left wing-backs. We expected Ryan Aït-Nouri to push up as a left wing-back. We didn't see that here. Rico Lewis inverted in. He said, I believe this was to control the centre and help protect the area due to a lack of Rodri. Rodri wasn't in the squad. They needed support in midfield, hence Rico Lewis inverting in. This meant that Aït-Nouri was more a third centre-back until settled possession, and contributed to him being able to get DEFCON. So again, Aït-Nouri got 15 defensive contributions because he was basically playing a lot of the game as a left centre-back. As Luke says, this role is perfect for Gvardiol. So if Gvardiol had been fit and he wanted to play this setup, there is a genuinely good chance that Aït-Nouri wouldn't have started this game. We'll never know that though, because obviously Gvardiol also wasn't in the squad. He did then go on to say, in this setup, wide wingers are usually preferred or the pitch is too narrow. Obviously, lots of players in the middle, so you need Bob and Doku in this case to hold the width. He then goes on to say, with so much protection in the centre, this of course helped Tijjani Reijnders flourish and be the box crasher, giving Haaland support. So again, if you've got Rico Lewis inverting in, you've got Bernardo Silva, you've got Nico Gonzalez, you don't need Tijjani Reijnders to sit in that sort of 6-8 role. He's basically playing as an advanced number 10. And you can see that Tijjani Reijnders is the number 4. He was further forward than Rico Lewis, Bernardo Silva and Nico. And he was in a very similar sort of position in terms of up the pitch to Oscar Bob. So he was very, very advanced. He then goes on to say, Luke, though, don't be fooled. This is just one of Pep's setups. And as ever, he will pick on opponent and the players in form available to him. And again, Marmoush and Shirky didn't start. Phil Foden wasn't there. If you say that those three players aren't going to sit on the bench every week, what if there is a setup where he goes, actually, I want the fullbacks pushing on. I want Ryan Ait-Nouri and I want Mateus Nunes pushing up the pitch. Well, then in the middle of the pitch, Reijnders, again, probably won't have that freedom. He might either have to sit deeper, or might we see a setup where it is a little bit more defensive? He doesn't have to start every game. And even if he does, we might see a world in which he doesn't have that same freedom. Now, again, this is just a lot of hypothesizing. All of this to say, the next game he might go with exactly the same setup. Tijjani Reijnders might have that same freedom, and he might look unbelievable. But you never know with Pep. Did you expect Marmoush to be benched? I didn't. Since Marmoush joined Man City, he's had the second most minutes of any outfield City player, bar Gvardiol. So I didn't expect him to sit on the bench. And again, Shirky, when he came on, looked so good. Phil Foden wasn't there. So I just think that City have so many players that you do need to be careful. Now, do I think that that was one of the most impressive performances I've ever seen from a player in their first game in the Premier League? Yes. I was tweeting. I'm a Man United fan. I had a big smile on my face watching Tijjani Reijnders. He was that good. I can't think of many players that have had a debut quite like that. And at 5.5 million, if you've got a City player that is playing like that in an advanced role, supporting Haaland, I mean, he was just everywhere in that game, like absolutely everywhere, taking shots, making passes. He missed the chance himself towards the end. That is just a player that I think is ridiculous value. So if you went without Tijjani Reijnders, do I think you made a mistake? I would say potentially, because it looks like he could be one of the players that you could say is a genuine game breaker if he continues like this. Would I now knee-jerk him in on a Sunday or Monday to try and protect value and to try and avoid losing out? No, that is not the way I play the game. And I know that's easy for me to sit here and say because I own him, but I would absolutely not knee-jerk him on a Sunday. So much can change throughout the week. Even himself, what if he picks up an injury? What if someone else in your midfield picks up an injury and you could have just done them to Reijnders instead? I know protecting team value is important at the start of the season, but it's just not worth it for me. And especially if you own Elliot Anderson, I would not for a second do Elliot Anderson to Reijnders. Elliot Anderson was very close himself to outscoring Reijnders. There was a point when he was almost on DEFCON, he had the clean sheet point, he had the assist, and he was on bonus. There was a point when Elliot Anderson looked like he'd get an 11-pointer from a single assist. He is a brilliant option. He's got much more secure minutes, and the fixtures are really good. So I wouldn't be doing Anderson to Reijnders. If you've got another route to Reijnders and you're super confident you want to make it, I don't want to put you off too much. But for me, I would just relax, right? A little bit of patience, a little bit of just assessing what happens, because there is a world in which he's benched in the next game, or that he gets 60 minutes and he plays a much deeper role. And then you'll be like, yeah, do you know what? Maybe it was just a one-off for the Wolves game, or just a really good performance from him that we might not see as much moving forward. So hopefully that was helpful, that discussion around Reijnders. It does look like he might rise in price tonight. Again, check the price changes down below using Fantasy Football Hub throughout the evening. I think he's brilliant. If you want to get him, go for it, but also don't feel the need to knee-jerk him in. So guys, as of right now, my Game Week 2 team looks okay, but there are certainly a few fixtures in there which don't look perfect on paper. So let me read it out. In goal, I've currently got Robert Sanchez against West Ham. I do have Dubravka on the bench against Sunderland. I am tempted to play him, but as you can see right now, I'm also playing a Stev, and I don't know that I would necessarily want double Burnley defence. So Sanchez in goal at the moment. The back three then is Nico Williams against Crystal Palace, Esteve against Sunderland, and Richards against Forest at home. I'm pretty happy with that back three. I definitely have a decision to make though, because I've got Pedro Porro against City and Juve against Chelsea on the bench. Neither of them have a good fixture, and I expect both to concede, but they are also very attacking. But I just think those other three players have significantly better fixtures, to the point where I'd rather play them. The midfield five then is obviously Wirtz, Salah, Fernandes, Palmer, and Tijjani Reijnders. I think I just want to play these five every single week, regardless of fixtures. There is a debate about captaincy this week. Like Watkins against Brentford, by the way. I think given the way Brentford defended is an option. You could argue for Fernandes against Fulham or Palmer against West Ham. I was not impressed enough with Palmer. I still am not fully there with Watkins in terms of captaincy. So I think I will just revert to a Salah captain against Newcastle. But obviously, Salah wasn't overly impressive in Game Week 1, and Newcastle were pretty good in Game Week 1 against Aston Villa. So there's a little bit putting me off there. Obviously, if I had someone like Bukayo Saka, I would be very tempted. Although, again, in Game Week 1, I was not impressed with Arsenal, and Saka really, really struggled, I think, to get into that game. So I'm pretty happy having Salah captain. The rest of the midfield will be absolutely fine too, which means that my front two is currently Watkins against Brentford and Fulkrug against Chelsea, with Guiu on the bench against Burnley. It is a shame that Guiu got 0 minutes, but not only did Guiu get 0 minutes, but Mayenda scored, and when Mayenda came off, it was Isidore that came on ahead of Guiu, and Isidore also scored a very good goal. So the two other forwards at Sunderland both got minutes and both scored, and Guiu got 0 minutes. So I think by all accounts, it does look like Guiu probably won't get good enough minutes to think about playing him. So what are the key decisions for me then if I look at this team? I guess, like I say, the defence and goalkeeper in terms of who to start, I think I've got a nice balance here. I'm playing the players with the better fixtures, bar maybe Sanchez versus Dubravka, but I just don't know yet right now if I want to go all in on Burnley. The thing that I will say is unless I make a transfer for Fulkrug, I'm probably starting Fulkrug against Chelsea this week. So maybe what I could do is go all in on West Ham scoring against Chelsea and then start Dubravka instead. That way I'm sort of putting all of my eggs in the basket of West Ham scoring. But can I sit here right now and confidently say that I think West Ham will score? No. But maybe that is, in terms of trying to really optimise points, the way to look at it. So yeah, I think that's really it. In terms of kind of players that I'm looking at moving out already, both of the West Ham boys, right? As much as I was impressed by Juve, the fixtures now with Chelsea, Forest, Spurs, Palace, Everton, they're not great. But I think I'm okay enough with Juve because I've chosen defenders where he rotates really well. I don't have to play Juve when he has a tricky fixture. And when he has a slightly better one, then I can. And again, I was quite impressed with how attacking he was. Really, it is just Fulkrug. Fulkrug's the one that I look at. And we'll discuss my watch list in the next section. There are certainly other players I'm looking at, but not many of them can I get there with one free transfer. And again, am I really sitting there now confident enough that I've learned enough from Game Week 1 that I want to get rid of Fulkrug already? I'm not sure, because again, he did create a couple of chances. If he'd have picked up a single assist, I probably wouldn't even be sat here worrying. It was just the fact that he blanked, but so many did. João Pedro blanked as an example that loads of other people thought would be fantastic. It was really only Erling Haaland and Chris Wood that sort of stand out, or stood out, I should say, that you'd really, really want from Game Week 1. So yeah, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh on Fulkrug, but I'm looking at him now against Chelsea at home and thinking I'd definitely probably prefer someone else in there. So yeah, I don't think there's too much more to say on Game Week 2 at the moment. In an ideal world, of course, you're looking to roll in Game Week 2. You don't really want to make a transfer the week after you've spent 4 weeks planning a team out and you've had limited transfers. I don't really want to knee-jerk a transfer right now. I've got the main player that a lot of other people don't look to move to, which is obviously Tijjani Reijnders. Outside of that, I don't see anyone that I'm desperate to bring in right now. But let's definitely take a look at my watch list because there are quite a few players that I like the look of. So guys, as of right now, here is my Game Week 2 watch list. I won't spend too much time going through all of the players because we can discuss this throughout the week in other videos. But as of right now, I've got a decent number of players on here. Obviously, some of them are knee-jerks, players that did very well in Game Week 1 that I maybe wouldn't have considered otherwise. Chris Wood was a player that I completely discounted, but I'm not going to be silly here. He looked great in Game Week 1. If he continues to still score goals, then it's one of those where, again, I will just react to that and I'll consider him as an option. But also, some of these are players that maybe didn't do overly well in Game Week 1, but I still do like as options. So let's start with the defenders. I don't really desperately want to make a defensive transfer right now. The only player that I had eyed up before Game Week 1 even started was actually Munoz. I looked at it and just thought, I could see myself doing Porro to Munoz at some point, or if I free up some money, trying to get Munoz in, even alongside Richards in my team. Palace are a good defence. Munoz is so attacking. And again today, he looked pretty good for defensive contributions too. So I really like Munoz, I always have, and I always will. Two players that I was really impressed with, though, was actually Trufer and Livramento. Trufer looked very, very similar, and that's the Bournemouth left-back, by the way. He looked very similar to Kirkes. He got up and down the left against Liverpool. I think put in some really nice crosses. Obviously, Bournemouth conceded a lot of chances to Liverpool, but Liverpool are fantastic, and this Bournemouth defence is sort of newly put together. So I think at points this season, Trufer will look nice, and they've got that difficult fixture out the way now. I actually quite like Bournemouth's fixture run. Livramento, I think, got 3 bonus points in that game. He created 2 chances himself. And I think that Newcastle, again, are probably a team that we overlooked because of everything going on with Isak, because they missed out on a lot of their key transfer targets in the window. But if Eddie Howe can get them playing football the way they did in Game Week 1, Livramento looks really good. In terms of the midfielders, I've got Anderson, Rodgers, Semenyo, Gakpo and Saka. I didn't see enough from Arsenal to really desperately want to make a move for Saka or Gyökeres. Maybe that is just United putting a really good performance. And again, I think Saka and Gyökeres could both do really well against Leeds. But for me to have done something like Palmer to Saka in Game Week 2, I needed to see a lot more from Arsenal. As soon as Palmer put in a poor performance, by the way, which I think it was, I was like, if Saka looks really good, Palmer to Saka is going to be super popular. But I just didn't quite see enough for me. And at that cheaper price, I still think Anderson is great. I actually jokingly put out a tweet, which was, should I do something like Palmer to Anderson and Watkins to Haaland? I believe that is the exact funds to do Palmer to Anderson, Watkins to Haaland. Overall, I'd probably enjoy looking at my team a little bit more if that was my team right now. So I'm definitely eyeing up Anderson as a second 5-5 alongside Reijnders if I do really need to free up some money soon. I still think Morgan Rogers will be good. Brentford was so bad in Game Week 1. Aston Villa now go to Brentford. I think that's a game I could see Rogers and Watkins doing really well. And then, yeah, Semenyo and Gakpo, two other options around that price. Semenyo was brilliant in Game Week 1, and I'm so happy for him after obviously being subject to racist abuse. To go and score 2 goals, I had a huge smile on my face for him. It was a brilliant performance. He took both of his goals so incredibly well as well. His minutes are always good. If Semenyo can finish a bit better, because that was our only criticism last year, he had the 4th most shots in the Premier League last year. He just wasn't very good at finishing. If he can slightly improve that, he'll be brilliant. And then Gakpo, like I said in the interesting stats section, the most XA of any player in Game Week 1. He scored the goal, his minutes were good. I have been eyeing up something like Wirtz to Gakpo to free up $1 million. In terms of the forwards, I've got 2 options, right? I can downgrade Watkins to someone like an Ekatike, a Chris Wood, and even Ilson. Or I'm then also looking at, can I get Fulkrug up to someone like Thiago or Strand Larsen? Well, I guess Thiago's the same price, but I've either got the option of moving Fulkrug sideways or trying to downgrade Watkins. I've even looked at a combination of transfers, like something like Ollie Watkins down to a 7.5, whether that's Mateta, Wood, João Pedro, or even Ilson, and then upgrading Fulkrug. That might be my best way to pivot away from Fulkrug in my team. So yeah, my forwards at the moment, I'm looking at Thiago, scored a penalty for Brentford today. If they don't look to sign another 9 in the market, he could be great. I was really impressed with Strand Larsen against Man City. I actually think he had a really good performance overall. And then as much as even Ilson didn't do too much, I really rate him. I can't not talk about Chris Wood, given that he scored a brace. I mean, the man always continues to embarrass me whenever I don't consider him. And then, yeah, Ekatike was brilliant on his debut. I mean, I speak about Tijjani Reijnders having a great debut. Ekatike was exceptional. I can't not put Erling Haaland on here as well, given he scored a brace, but it's going to be very difficult for me to get to Erling Haaland anytime soon. So these are the players that I'm considering currently on my watch list. I don't know how likely it is that I move to any of them this week. I need to see what happens. If someone picks up an injury in training, I might make a move straight away. But I'm also wanting to try and collect as much information as I can, whether that be eye test, whether that be underlying data, whether that be opinions from fans from the first games. Like at the moment, I'm trying to act like a sponge, not make any moves, not panic, but just trying to absorb as much information as I can. I think that's all we can look to do at the moment. So then, yeah, if I go back to my team, this is my team for Game Week 2 as things stand. Let me know what you think on those key decisions. Do you think I desperately need to make a transfer right now? In terms of the defense and goalkeepers, who would you be starting? Let me know what your major decisions are for Game Week 2 as well. And like I said, if you are looking at potentially making an early transfer, do check out the link down below to Fantasy Football Hub to get free price changes or access to all of the other amazing stuff on their site for 50% off. I'm trying to not knee-jerk too much, but yeah, not the best Game Week 1, but I guess it could have been a little bit worse. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 2 transfer plans and early thoughts. Hopefully you did enjoy. And if you got to this point in the video and you're not yet subscribed, please do consider subscribing. As I said, I'll do this video pretty much every week right after the football ends to give you something to watch and just to extend the football at the weekend. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, bye-bye.